Now, you have blown up in the world with your work, your message, and it spread like wildfire over the last 20 plus years. You became, I think, well known for the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which is the one I first heard about when I learned about you, I don't know, whenever this was, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I think. But this has been around for a long time, right? Right. 15 million books sold worldwide. You've got a new book called The 5 a.m. Club. Own your morning and elevate your life. Make sure you guys get this. We're going to dive into this and a lot of other things. But first, I want to know more about why you got into this space in the first place and how this all developed for you.
Sure. I used to be a litigation lawyer, so I come from very humble beginnings. I was blessed with incredible parents, but I sure didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. And, you know, Lewis, I've experienced what life is like at the top of the mountain, but I've also been in the valley of darkness. And if you were to deconstruct the word passion, the root is suffering.
Really?
And suffering makes great leaders. Suffering makes the Mandelas. Suffering makes the Oprahs. And I think a great life, richly lived, has lots of the good as well as the challenge.
Yeah.
So I became a lawyer for all the wrong reasons.
Money?
Well, exactly. So the society's seductions, money, applause, material things, beautiful home, etc. And I had a lot of those things. I became really successful as a litigation lawyer, but I'd wake up in the morning and I'd look in the bathroom mirror and I didn't like the man that was looking back. I was very empty. Jim Carrey has this great quote, right? Like, you know, I wish everyone could experience
being rich and famous,
right? To realize that's not where peace of mind and a joyful heart and true wealth really is. And so once I got to that place, I said, look, I've done everything that I should be doing to find this joy in my heart when I wake up and a fire in the belly, and yet I still feel incredibly empty. So there's got to be more. And long story short, you know, I don't want to bore you with my whole story, but long story short, I went on an odyssey. I started studying the great geniuses of the world, the great women and men of the world, the true humanitarians and history makers, the geniuses. And I decided to write a little book that I titled The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that was self-published in a Kinko's copy shop.
Wow.
My mom edited it. My father helped me sell it, one book at a time at service clubs. I know you do big seminars and events. My first seminar was 23 people. 21 of those people were my family members.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the journey.
What year was that when the book came out?
Oh, wow. It would have been the late 1990s.
Wow.
I don't know if you've heard of that decade, but it was a pretty good decade.
It was pretty good, yeah. I was born in '83. The 90s were interesting for me. 90s were a lot of suffering, actually.
For you?
Yeah, a lot of suffering.
Wow, and I see tears in your eyes. So.
Yeah. I mean, it was dark. I think it was just like, there was a lot of joy and love. I think we focus more on the suffering and the painful times than the love. I think we remember those times for whatever reason because they create trauma in our lives. But it also made me so caring and compassionate and just a big dreamer to realize that there's more than just this suffering and struggle. And that's what I think was the spark for me, is like you talked about some of the greatest leaders all suffered, and then they learn how to have like this incredible rich life because they know how dark it's been for them. And I think that's what I always focus on. No matter what challenge I've been through, there's always richness on the other side.
You know, I totally hear you. And there's a line in the 5 a.m. Club from Rumi, the great philosopher, and he said, keep breaking your heart over and over until it opens. And the last chapter of the 5 a.m. Club is set in Robben Island. And I don't want to ruin the surprise ending, but it has a lot to do with Nelson Mandela. And my life changed about 2.5 years ago when I stood in Nelson Mandela's prison cell. I took the ferry over to Robben Island, and I had a private guide take me into the prison cell, and he was a former ANC prisoner, and I said, did you know Mr. Mandela? And he said, I served 8 years with Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
And I said, what was he like? And he said, that man was a humble servant.
I just got chills.
Yeah, and I stood in the limestone quarry, where he was forced to do 8 years of hard labor with no meaning because they didn't use the limestone for anything. It was just another form of psychological torture. And I stood in the shower area where young guards would see this elderly statesman showering, and they again laughed at him. And in the book, I actually shared the story of how they asked Nelson Mandela to create a grave, to dig a grave.
For himself?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh.
And then, Lewis, they said, get in the grave.
No way.
And they urinated on him.
No way.
And yet, as I share in the book, when he emerged from prison, he invited the prosecutor who looked for the death penalty to dinner.
Oh my gosh.
And he took one of the prison guards who tortured him, but he later got to know him and became sort of friends. He invited him to his inauguration as the president of South Africa. And he was asked, why would you possibly do that? And he said, because if I didn't, I'd still be in prison. And I think the larger point for your millions of followers is simply to remember, you know, leadership in life is a wild, beautiful journey. It's dangerous. If you want to get to the top of the mountain, a lot of the 5M Club is about exponential creativity, productivity, elite performance. If you want to do those things, if you want to be a real history maker, it's a dangerous game. It's a fun game. You're going to suffer. You're going to be exhilarated. You're going to be tested. You're going to go to the jagged edges of your potential, but it's not always easy, but it's the most beautiful way to spend the rest of your life.
Wow. What has been your biggest test as you've risen to one mountaintop and then the next one, and you know, you keep growing every year and have new achievements and accomplishments and notoriety and all these things happen for you.
Right.
What's been the biggest test or tests that have shaken your core, your heart? Someone's tried to take you down, or lawsuits, or what's it been?
I've gone through a lot of tests.
Right.
You know, I'll share one thing.
Yeah.
There's no way the 5am Club would be the book it is if I haven't gone through my personal hells as well as the good times. Because it's what tears us apart and challenges us that teaches us the noble virtues of the great women and men of the world.
Yeah.
The ego, Lewis says, let me get out of this difficult season as quickly as possible so I can, you know, eat in nice restaurants and hang out with the cool people and do fun things. But a bad day for the ego is a great day for the hero inside of us.
Wow.
And so the real game of the titans and the legends isn't an easy life and a pleasurable life, and the real game of the heavyweights on the planet is how can I use those difficult times? Sometimes we get them every day, little things, right? But how can I use these to enrich me and to introduce me to my primal genius and the natural hero within me? Here's what I mean. So I've gone through situations where, yeah, people have tried to take me down. You're absolutely right. I've had 10 years of my personal journals where I pour my heart, my confusion, my pain, my hopes, my dream. I've had those, I'll just simply say, taken.
Wow.
Which taught me detachment.
Wow.
Like, Lewis, imagine, do you journal?
A little bit, here and there, yes, a little bit.
Okay, journaling is incredible.
It's powerful, yeah.
For self-excavation, for creativity, productivity. Yeah. We can get into epigenetics. You know, if you want to rewire your psychology as well as your heart set, journaling is powerful. But I've had those taken
away from you.
Just taken away from me.
10 years of journals.
Oh, 10 years of journals.
Oh my God, all your private thoughts.
All my
and
private thoughts,
fears.
Exactly. So that's just one thing that I've gone through.
So what was the lesson there? Learning detachment and
letting go.
Not caring about the opinions of others?
Yeah. There's been another time of my life, and I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but where there was a situation where I could have lost everything that I've spent 22 years in this field of leadership and personal mastery building, which again taught me what real wealth and success is all about. I mean, there's a line in the 5am Club, which is your peace of, nothing is worth the price of your peace of mind.
Right.
And, you know, I'm good. Like I live a wonderful life. I'm extremely grateful, and yet if I just had my family and their good health and my good health and work that's creative and a nice mountain bike to ride in the morning, I'd be fine. I don't need much. And another thing, you asked what I'm struggling with or what I've struggled with. I think one of the greatest ones is we struggle with our own self-doubt and our own insecurities. And I just, to sort of put myself at home, to hold my heart in my hand here on this podcast where you influence and impact millions of people. I don't want anyone to think that I'm anyone special. As we go out in the world more and more, it is a dangerous game, right?
Yeah.
I shared with you before we got on here, I worked 4 years on the 5 a.m. Club. I wanted it to be the best piece of work I've ever done. I've gone to places I've never gone to, and it's this quirky blend of elite performance ideas and how the great geniuses did it, and the morning routine of the heroes and icons, and the philosophy of prosperity. And I took myself to places I've never been to. And now I'm at a place when the book is out, it's like putting myself
Very
out
vulnerable.
there.
Very vulnerable.
It's very vulnerable because people can laugh. People can laugh at your baby. People might not understand it. So when we put out our best work, it's far from easy. It's much easier to coast and stagnate.